Rece Davis, one of the faces of college basketball there on ESPN and a friend of the show. We appreciate him. Somebody told us in the chat room that one day on McAfee, Rece said he learned of Bucky McMillan, some friends of his who do a show in Birmingham. We just owned that is us. I don't know, Rece, if you were talking about us, but we took ownership of it.
Yes.
I don't remember. I've heard of Bucky for quite some time. People, touting him for jobs. Well, he was a standout high school coach there, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mountain Brook, yeah.
Mountain Brook, and did they win a bunch of state championships? Maybe I think something like that.
Yeah, Trendon Watford. Do you remember Trendon Watford that played at?
Of course,
that was his star player there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, they've got a good team and a fun team to watch, and I think they also got, as crazy as this is to say, I think they got an excellent draw. now, if they had drawn Kansas at full strength, would that have been a bad deal for them? But Kansas is not going to be close to full strength now, and so I think it's a pretty good draw for them.
Your opinion, please, on what we were just discussing. Dunaway thinks Bill Self gamed the system a little bit with the selection committee on how he slow played the announcement of this.
Those are harsh words, but
literally,
that's exactly what you said. But it is the genesis of what I was saying.
Do you maybe see that, Rece, to protect his seating a little bit?
Well, I mean, who wouldn't do that? Everybody does that. I mean, it would have been news if he didn't do that. I mean, college coaches are not predisposed to give away any type of information. They won't acknowledge that the sun rises in the east. So they're not going to acknowledge that a player is not going to go. But I think that most people watching that had a pretty good idea that Kevin McCullough wouldn't be able to go. The real question is, where's Hunter Dickinson? Now, the shoulder injury that he suffered appeared to be, and I shouldn't say this because you're going to get in trouble. I may be dead wrong about this. So I want to offer that caveat. When Hunter was hurt, it appeared to the untrained eye that the shoulder came out of place. Now, if you are familiar with these injuries, and my son had this happen, so I am to some degree, not like a doctor, but what I was told by doctors at the time, this is going to continue to happen. Now, go back in, rehab it, you can probably go. If it doesn't come out, great. If it does, well, there you go. So if indeed that is the case and that's what happened, then you don't know where you are with him. Now, maybe they're like, no, just, he just hurt it bruised, it was a little strained. We've given him the Big 12 tournament off and some time, and he's good. And that may be the case, and I hope it is. But I think it also is fair to wonder whether he is 100%, going into it. So you've got the two best players for Kansas, who one of whom will not play, and the other one that they hope will play and hope will be is as good as he normally is, because he is an excellent player.
I think a lot of people, Rece, agree that two coaches under the most pressure, both in the Midwest, Purdue and Tennessee. If I said one of those two teams gets to the Final Four in Phoenix, or I'll give you the field of the other 14 teams, combo of Purdue, Tennessee, or the other 14?
Oh, I'll take Purdue, Tennessee. Because I think Tennessee's not only going to the Final Four, I think they're going to go to the national championship game and get whooped by UConn, which is what everybody else is going to do, as well as whoever. In fact, if you meet UConn, if you get to UConn in your bracket, you should hang a banner at the end and say we maximize. It should say maximized our NCAA tournament bid, because we made it to UConn, and then you get beat. I make it sound like they're invincible, and I'm being slightly hyperbolic. But as it pertains to Purdue and Tennessee, both have enormous tournament baggage. Purdue more so than Tennessee, but Purdue's bracket opened up rather nicely for them, I think, already. So I will be shocked if Purdue doesn't make it to the Elite Eight. I think they'll play Tennessee there, and I favor Tennessee to win that game. But, Zach Edey is the one force that no one can match up with in college basketball. So I would be very happy for either of those guys in either of those programs if they make it to the Final Four. But I would definitely take Purdue, Tennessee over the rest of the field. That's the Midwest, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
The Midwest.
Definitely take those two over the rest of the field, because Kansas is diminished. Gonzaga is still really good, but they're not as good as they've been in recent years. Creighton's certainly a threat. I mean, that's an excellent team, and they're certainly a threat. But I would still take Purdue and Tennessee over the field.
I'm old, but I still, at this age in my career, Rece, I get caught up with recency bias. I was in Nashville for the SEC tournament. This Auburn team has such great chemistry. I thought 4 seemed a little low for them, but I know a lot of the tournaments aren't looked at by the selection committee. I thought maybe they would be a 3, but to your point, what you just said, if they win 2 games, they get UConn. And I would look at KenPom all year, and Auburn's so highly rated in KenPom. I feel like that's a little early to be having to play UConn. What do you think about Auburn's draw, and do you think maybe they got jabbed a little bit by the committee there?
The committee has, everybody always yells that they want consistency, right?
Right.
So the committee's been fairly consistent over the years, even though the members have changed and that they value certain things. They value the quad 1 wins since they've gone to the net. It used to be the old, RPI wins and stuff, the non-conference strength of schedule, all of those types of things that they reward. To my eye, Auburn looked more like a 3 or the last 2, certainly the way they played in Nashville. So I think it was really unfortunate. I don't think they tried to jab them purposely or anything like that, but I think it was a little unfortunate for both parties because there aren't many teams. I sort of extolled the virtues of UConn a couple of moments ago, and I do believe that. I believe they're going to win the national championship again, and I believe they're the best team. But anybody can play a poor game, or a less than A game. And if there's any team out there that would have the ability to, to sort of match up and give UConn a hard time, it's Auburn. And, so I think it's unfortunate for both. Really, to be honest, it's unfortunate that Auburn got put in that bracket, in that section of it with UConn. And I also thought that UConn by far got the most difficult draw among the 1 seeds with having Iowa State and Illinois in there, not to mention some capable teams on down the line, teams like, Drake and even San Diego State and FAU, so I thought they got a pretty tough draw as well. But I don't think it was like the committee hates Auburn. The committee doesn't like Auburn. The committee's going to try to stick it to Auburn. But I did think, at least to my eyes in watching this year, that I would have had them on the 3 line at least. And you could certainly make an argument for them fighting their way toward that last number 2.
ESPN's Rece Davis with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. You've already tipped off that you like the 1 and 2 seed in the Midwest. You like the 1 seed in the East. So in the South and the West, is there a non-1 seed that you say, you know what, I like the way they're playing, I like their draw, the 1 seed could be in trouble in that bracket?
I don't like necessarily the way they're playing, but it kind of came down to me in the South, Duke and Kentucky. I don't love the way Duke is playing right now, and yet I still inexplicably have Duke going to the Final Four. That's more because of this bracket philosophy. As you guys know, I worked for a number of years with Bob Knight, and one of Bob's mantras that he would always say, he'd go, "Dumb loses more than smart wins." You'll do dumb things to lose way more than you'll do smart things to win. Now, that doesn't mean the teams that lose always just do dumb things, but I've sort of applied it to trying to fill out the bracket. Who do I find excessive vulnerabilities for? And as much as I like Kelvin Sampson and I like Houston and love the passion with which they play, man, that having to get garbage time points to get to 41 against Iowa State scared me to death. And so I sort of got really, I know it's 1 game and I get that, but I got scared off of Houston there. Marquette, you don't know about Tyler Kolek, with his oblique injury. Is he 100%? And Kentucky, if Kentucky on a whim decides to guard the way it did the night I saw them play Auburn, Kentucky could run through this whole thing, because even as good as I think UConn is, Kentucky's probably better offensively than UConn is. So, I like Kentucky and Duke out of there. I don't trust Kentucky's defense, so I ended up almost sort of taking a deep breath and saying, okay, I'll put Duke through the Final Four. In terms of the other one, sort of looking at vulnerabilities, I don't have them going to the Final Four, but I have New Mexico to the Elite Eight. Now, New Mexico could lose to Clemson in the West for sure. 6-11 game, but that's another bracket and another group where I'm saying I don't really trust all of these teams, so take a little bit of a flyer. They're at least moving out to the 8 out of that part of the bracket in the West.
Yeah, sticking in the West, I think anybody that watches college basketball realizes Alabama is taking on water. But, boy, they got a favorable draw. Do you think Alabama puts it together and
Let's see what you say about that on Friday. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I keep hearing that. I'm not sure I believe that.
Well, let me ask you
Go
this,
ahead.
Rece. If we just, and I said this on our selection show Sunday, if you switched the 4s from the East to the West and Auburn was Alabama's draw, would you have Auburn possibly in the Final Four?
Let's see, Auburn out. No, because they would be in Carolina's group, which I would not have them Final Four. But I certainly agree that it would be more favorable than playing UConn. Alabama is better than Charleston, but this smells like upset to me because they're the type of team. Charleston can shoot it from 3. They shoot it a lot. They've gotten better over the course of the season, sort of put it together. They've got a couple guys who've been around. And sometimes I think it's hard to regain momentum. Alabama has just appeared to be slightly out of sorts. It's to their credit, man, that they have fought back and won games like the Florida game at home, the Arkansas game at home. That is to their credit, because most teams without some fight, those are just like, yeah, not our night, not going to work, not happening. So I give them credit for that. But taking on water is the right terminology, I think. And oftentimes it seems that teams that are taking on water struggle when they play capable teams that are maybe a little bit out of the spotlight teams, which I think Charleston has been, although they're well coached and can, they play a lot like Alabama does, as Nate Oats has pointed out. So, I think that's a tough matchup, but I think it's probably also true that, given the fact that Alabama, through injury and a lot of other reasons and just maybe a little fatigue, gotten a little out of sorts lately. So maybe just about any draw they would have gotten is a tough one for them.
I remember when Andy Kennedy took the UAB job, I texted him and said, dude, I'm disappointed you're leaving broadcasting because I thought you were really, really good working as a basketball analyst. Fantastic. Yeah. But he 4 straight 20-plus wins year, and he's got UAB in the first year in the American. He's got them back in the NCAA tournament. He's actually a better coach than he is a broadcaster, and he's a damn good broadcaster.
He's a great coach, and I know you guys are salivating for that UAB Auburn round of 32 matchup, right? Yeah. I mean, would that play well in your hometown?
Yeah, would break our heart.
Well, I mean, the good news is we would have a state team get into a second weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you might have several. If I'm wrong about Alabama, if you get the Auburn UAB matchup, and if Samford draws a wounded Kansas team, and then it just takes one more, So you guys might have your heads on a swivel there by the second week of the tournament.
Our state did host 2 game days this year for basketball.
That's right.
That's right. We hosted 2 game days. We're a basketball state. We're right now we are planting tobacco down to the Mercedes plant. We're going to call that Tobacco Road between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa.
Don't rub it in. The ACC's got enough trouble right now. In case you guys noticed that yesterday. With Clemson.
Dabo's down here on the street corner trying to get an SEC bid downtown Birmingham. Wants an offer to come join the SEC.
Hey, Rece, from your network, I learned a double-digit seed is advanced to the Sweet 16 in 15 straight tournaments. I don't have a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. I went against the trend. Is New Mexico your team, or is it somebody else?
Well, it's not the only one in the Sweet 16. I have to look at my bracket. I've got New Mexico in the Sweet 16. I have McNeese State in the Sweet 16. I have sorry for Bucky ball. I've got McNeese taking out Samford in the second round. Now I'm sort of a chalk eating weasel the rest of the way, but those are the ones I think. I think they're the only ones that I have in the Sweet 16. So I've got McNeese, I've got New Mexico, and whoever else. I can't remember who else I just said.
If those happen, do you think Ricky Pitino Jr. and Will Wade are looking at other jobs?
I don't know about. I don't know. It would take. You've got and Will Wade in a story. If you guys read, I think it was in The Athletic recently. Understands his circumstance and understands that certain only certain schools, would be willing to hire him. But that guy can coach. I mean, the proof is in the wins, and certainly there are some schools who might, be willing to take on all that goes with that. Richard Pitino has been around. He's got a good gig. Richard's a really good coach, and he's got a good program in New Mexico, and that's a good basketball school. And I think he's always an attractive candidate if he wants to be. But he seems to be, he's bounced around a little, and he seems to be pretty happy in Albuquerque right now.
If I would have told you that at Alabama, the buyout for one coach was $18 million and the buyout for another coach was $4 million, would you believe that it was the basketball coach that was the $18 million and the football was $4 million?
That is a bit of a surprise and sort of goes along with what you guys were talking about. But I also think it's a very wise move, because what you want to do when you've got a guy that is as good as Nate is, and he's excellent, you don't want to make it easy for him. You want to show that you want to build around him, that you want him to establish the empire. And if someday, he decides to leave for whatever might be considered a dream job, which, if you talk to NBA people, probably be an NBA job, something like that. Maybe there's some jobs in college, I don't know. But what you've done is you've made it a tiny, tiny, tiny little pool of college jobs. And if a guy wants to go to the NBA, so be it. Good for you. Not saying that he is. I've never had that conversation with him about it. But what you've done is you've shown commitment to him, you've shown commitment to basketball, and you've made it extraordinarily difficult for someone just to come in and say, hey, basketball is more important than football at our school. Come here. And you've given a coach, in this case Nate, but any coach, you've given him a lot more to think about in that regard. And I think that was a very wise move by Alabama to keep it going. Is that a play at Auburn too? What's Bruce's buyout compared to Hugh Freeze? Do we know?
That's a great question.
I don't know. I'll check that.
Yeah.
I'll check that.
But the same thing would apply to Auburn. I mean, and this is you guys understand, and you've made note of how important basketball has become. Think about, and it's always been important, but think about the level of coaches in the state of Alabama at the big programs right now with Nate Oats and Bruce Pearl and Andy Kennedy and now Bucky McMillan as a rising star. And I'm sure you guys know some others at some other schools who I'm sure are great coaches, but those are the for all the time. And now with Samford making the tournament this year, those are the ones who are on the forefront. And those are guys who've done excellent jobs and are just tremendous basketball coaches.
All right, as we've interviewed Rece, there's one thing I'm certain about on this tournament. Some game day researcher has a good analytic on New Mexico. I saw Andrea Carter with them in her Final Four, and Rece has got them.
What did she really?
Yeah, it was on the screen the other day. Yeah, she had them in her Final Four, Rece.
Well, let me say this about New Mexico, and this is the one that will get me knocked around a little bit. I fully understand Clemson can beat them. So part of that is still, I've called Clemson games this year, and the two times I've seen them in person, they've looked fantastic, and then they'll turn around and, lose at home to Georgia Tech, even though they'll lose at home to NC State before NC State got hot, and they sort of break your heart. I want to love Clemson. I do. The team, they've got PJ Hall, they got Ian Shefflin, got Chase Hunter, they've got all these guys who can really play, and then they break your heart. So, if they win, it's not going to stun me. But if New Mexico wins, I think they've got a little bit of a shot in that bracket, because Arizona's a great team, high in the analytics, but man, they can throw out a stinker too. There are a lot of teams in that section of the bracket that somehow just over the course of the season have just, turned in some stinkers. So playing the odds a little bit.
Rece, you're very kind with your time. I hope you know how much we appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the tournament.
All right, you guys too. See you later.
All right, thank you. Rece Davis with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.